David had always believed in coincidences, but lately, they seemed to be lining up like a string of warning lights on a dark highway. He and Sarah had been dating for nearly 2 years after meeting at their corporate job, a bustling office filled with clacking keyboards and whispered gossip. She had been the bright spot in his gray workdays, her laughter ringing through the break room, her kindness magnetic. But something had shifted recently, and David couldn't shake the gnawing unease. It started with Sarah's sudden late meetings. She'd stay at the office well after he left, citing deadlines and demanding clients. He wanted to trust her, he really did. But then there were the muffled phone calls, the hastily closed laptop screens, and the perfume he didn't recognize lingering faintly on her clothes. One evening, as David scrolled absent-mindedly through his phone on the couch, he saw Sarah's favorite scarf draped over the armrest. A thread of curiosity tugged at him. He reached for it, and as he did, her phone, buried beneath it, lit up with a notification. It wasn't the message itself that caught his attention, but the name Elliot. Elliot was new to their office, a charming, charismatic hire who had quickly become everyone's favorite. David had noticed how Sarah seemed more animated when she spoke about him, but he brushed it off as harmless admiration. Now, his chest tightened as the words from the notification replayed in his mind. "Tonight was amazing. Can't wait to see you again." He stared at the screen, his mind racing. Did he confront her? Pretend he hadn't seen it? The thought of losing Sarah was unbearable, but so was the idea of being a fool. His hands trembled as he placed the phone back where he found it, careful not to disturb the scene. He decided to wait, to watch and gather more evidence. The next day at work, David kept his distance, observing Sarah from afar. She seemed normal, perhaps too normal. He couldn't tell if she was genuinely oblivious to his suspicions or if she was simply that good at hiding things. Around noon, he noticed her leave her desk and head toward the elevator. Moments later, Elliot followed. David's heart pounded as he stood up and discreetly trailed them, staying far enough behind to avoid detection. The elevator doors closed before he could reach them, but he caught the floor number they selected, 10th, where the conference rooms were. He took the stairs 2 at a time, adrenaline pushing him forward. When he reached the 10th floor, he moved quietly down the hallway, listening for voices. Through the cracked door of conference room B, he heard laughter. Sarah's laughter. Peeking in, his stomach dropped. She and Elliot were sitting close, their heads tilted toward each other, a look of intimacy in their eyes that he hadn't seen in months. She reached out and touched Elliot's arm, and David knew. He'd seen enough. He stepped back, his head spinning. Anger, betrayal, and heartbreak warred within him. But before he could retreat, the door swung open, and there stood Sarah, her eyes widening in shock as she saw him. David? What are you doing here? For a moment, words failed him. He glanced at Elliot, who had the decency to look sheepish, then back at Sarah. I could ask you the same thing, he said, his voice low but trembling. But I think I already know the answer. Sarah's face crumbled, and she reached out to him, but he stepped back. David, it's not what it looks like, she started, but he cut her off. Then tell me what it is, he demanded, his voice rising. Tell me why you've been lying to me, why you've been sneaking around with him. Tears welled in her eyes, but David wasn't moved. He'd given her everything, his time, his trust, his heart. And now it was shattered, pieces scattered like the remains of a glass dropped from a great height. I can't do this, he said finally, his voice breaking. You made your choice, Sarah. Now I'm making mine. He turned and walked away, leaving her standing in the hallway, calling his name. As he exited the building and stepped into the crisp evening air, he felt the weight of his heartbreak pressing down on him. But beneath it, a flicker of resolve burned. He would heal. He would move on. And one day, he would find someone who valued him as much as he valued them.